Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to my ultimate guide to Bogles Part 2, the sideboarding guide. Um, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through this Part 2 section here. It's 10 decks, it's quite intense. I'm going to do an overview on each deck and what I think of the matchup, what the cards are to look out for. And then I'm going to do a sideboarding guide for. I have two different decks in here. I've just simplified it for myself, or else this is just going to get really messy for both me doing it and for you viewing it. So I'm just doing a leyline main deck and a leyline sideboard boarding guide for these things. And the lists are pretty similar. Unfortunately, it's just going to get way too messy if I start including other cards, like for example Spider Umbra and random things like that. So I'm going to do part 2 here today for you guys, and then part 3 I'm going to go through next week. And with part 3, if there's any suggestions for decks I've missed, like one or two decks, I'm happy to include them. Just let me know in the comments and I'll include it in the week, as we're going on towards part 3. Okay, so this is my Leyline main deck list that I've got here. It's pretty well what I'm running at the moment online, and it's what I consider the best deck for me to be running at the moment in the metagame. So with it, I've got obviously my 20 lands. I've got my 3 basics, my 5 fetches, my 3 temple gardens, my 4 razor verge, and my 4 horizon canopy with the 1 dryad arbor. Got my 12 creatures, no surprises there. I've got 4 elves for ethereal armor, hyena umbra, and rancor. Shouldn't be any huge surprises there, with 3 elves for Griftburn and 2 elves for Sentinel's Eyes, 4 of Daybreak, 4 of Leyline, 3 Path Main. Sideboard, I've got the 4th Path. I've got 3 Rest in Peace. I've done away with Grafdigger's Cage for the time being, just because I'm sick of Mystic Sanctuary, and Grafdigger's Cage just doesn't do enough against that card. I've also got the 2 Suppression Field. I've brought back in 1 Collector Roof. I've done this over Stony Silence because I've pretty much brought it in response to Tron. And I'm happy, like, it was going to be a one of Stony Silence or Collector Roof, but I'm only ever playing it, like, on the play against Tron anyway. And the good thing about Collector Roof is, there's 2 good things about Collector Roof. It doesn't die to Nature's Claim, is one. And the other thing is it actually puts 2 power on the board for us to start attacking our opponent with, which is more relevant against them because they don't have removal. Against Eldrazi Tron, it gets a little bit iffy because they still have Dismember and Spatial Contortion, and it's probably not good against them. So to do that, I've actually reduced my Force of Vigor from 3 down to 2. And my Gadok Teeg's still at 3, my Torpor Orb all the way up at 3. Maybe that could be cut down and I could add a Force, but this was just sort of balanced with the Artifact hate and the ETB hate. So, with my Leyline in the sideboard, I've gone sort of like a little bit greedier. So I've dropped a Griftburn, and I've added in 2 Spirit Mantles, and I've got 2 Suppression Field in here and 4 Paths. So I've got 1 extra aura because in the how do I get backwards? In the previous list, I'm running 3 Paths, so I've actually got 7 in the utility slot there, and I'm 1 aura light of where I like to be normally, but I just wanted that because I wanted to include the Paths. So yeah, in this list I actually had an extra aura slot, and I went, okay, 2 Spirit Mantle seems pretty good and better than 1, and better than 4 Griftburn at the moment to me. Like, you can change that up if you want. But sideboard is essentially the same, except Leyline's been shifted out, Suppression Field's been shifted in, and a Path's been shifted in. So we got 3 Rest in Peace, 4 Leyline, 1 Collector Roof, 2 Force of Vigor, 3 Gadok Teeg, and 2 Torpor Orb. So I'm 1 short on the Torpor Orb there as well. Alright, so the first deck we're going to be doing here is Snow, Bant, and Saltai Control. So in my opinion, we are generally favoured against these decks, but the condition for that being true is the fact that we need to be aggressive. We need to be able to play 2 auras a turn, which means playing multiple 1-drop auras and having multiple 1-drop auras in our hand. Playing up multiple auras and attacking through. Rancor is important in this matchup, so that they can't just tempo block us with Ice Fang Coatl and stabilize and then hit their cryptic commands and their Mystic Sanctuaries and we're out of the game. So yeah, if the game goes too long, Cryptic, Mystic Sanctuary lock is a thing you can be worried about, and it will be an issue for us. But the only way they automatically win the game is if they're able to draw cards continuously, like, because they don't just auto win with it, because Cryptic will be on top and then they have to play Mystic Sanctuary, and then like when they play Mystic Sanctuary to put Cryptic on top, they need to have a draw card to draw it. If they have fetch lands and they have some more left in the deck, but normally they only run like 2 or 3 Mystic Sanctuary, not the full 4, not unless they're like a fully pledged control deck. So there is like room for them to like just miss. And yeah, like it's a little bit funky. And other than that, Uru can be a big monster for them if they get to go off. Obviously, it draws cards when it enters the battlefield or attacks. Unlike Croxer, it doesn't have to deal damage to us. It's just attacking triggers it, so that's really lame. And that's a card draw engine which helps fuel their lock, obviously, along with Ice Fang and Archmage's Charm and whatever else. Alright, so against these decks, I think the sideboard is quite simple because I think we're sort of favoured quite a lot. So with the Leyline in the main deck, I've got 3 paths in the deck. I only really want to see 6 cards from my sideboard, which are my Gaddock Teague and Rest in Peace. So I'll be taking out my Leyline of Sanctities and 2 out of 3 paths, leaving 1 path in there. It's not super dead because, as I said, you can just path an Uro in response to its trigger. Picture quality is different here and it's bugging me. So in the Leyline sideboard, so we'll take out Suppression Field. It doesn't do enough against this deck. They don't have enough fetch lands for it to, like, for us to take advantage of it. And we'll also be taking out all copies of Path. So these 6 cards coming out, same 6 cards coming in, Teague and Rest in Peace. Okay, so against Burn and Mono Red Prowess decks. Now they are different decks, but they're pretty similar in a lot of respects. So generally we are favoured against both, although the Mono Red Prowess deck can be quite scary because it does have a turn 3 kill. So beware of sideboard enchantment destruction effects like Deflecting Palm, Wear Tear, and I think it's called Cindervine's new enchantment thing. Those can be pretty frustrating to deal with. So generally speaking, in this matchup, both pre and post board, you would like to keep a hand with a hexproof creature and a 1-of out of either Leyline of Sanctity, Daybreak Coronet, or a Sentinel's Eyes plus probably a Hyena Umbra. So the reason you want to do that is because it stops a lot of their damage to your face, or you get life gain off of Daybreak. An honourable mention, which I haven't included here, but is Dramoka's Command could be very good against this deck, because it fogs one of their damage effects. It can't fog Skullcrack, but it can fog anything else. And it can also kill their creatures, so of course it's quite powerful. So removal is good against both the Burn deck and the Prowess deck, but typically it's better against the Prowess deck. Be aware that Prowess can have Blood Moon, but Burn has Eidolon of the Great Rebel. And Force of Vigor is good against both of these decks, particularly when you're on the draw. So obviously, if you're on the draw, your opponent plays a turn 2 Eidolon, and you're like, oh crap, now I have to like ration what enchantments I'm putting on the board. Not an issue if you've got Force of Vigor, because you can just deal with it without taking any damage. Also, if they've got Cindervines as well as their enchantment destroy effect, it also has applicability there. So, against Burn. I put a different sideboarding guide for with the Leyline main deck for Burn and Prowess. Only slightly different. Alright, so you want to take out, against Burn, you want to take out your core Spirit Dancers, and you want to bring in your 2 Force of Vigor and your 1 Path. So that would take you up to 4 paths in that main deck. Against Mono Red Prowess, really no core Spirit Dancers. Like, core Spirit Dancers not going to be any good at all. So you want to bring in your 2 Force of Vigors, your Path, and a Rest in Peace, just because they can operate out of their graveyard via Lava Dart, and Bedlam Reveler. And it's probably going to be more effective than having a 1 of Core Spirit Dancer, I guess. It could be subject to interpretation though. So with the Leyline in the sideboard deck, you're going to want to take out your core Spirit Dancers and your suppression field and just bring in your Leylines and your force. You've already got your 4 path in the main deck. Alright, so next matchup is Tron. So this is sort of a coin flip of a matchup, which usually comes down to whether or not they stumble for a turn or not. We're reasonably consistently a turn 4 deck, and Tron can pretty consistently get turn 3 Tron, at which point they just play a Khan and then destroy your good enchantment, and stabilize from there. It can be worth preempting the Khan, holding your good enchantment in hand, whether or not it's an Ethereal Armor, a Daybreak Coronet, or a Rancor, and holding that card in hand for an extra turn just to ensure it just doesn't die to Tron. Okay, so fortunate for us, they are soft to interaction post board. Ugin is almost impossible to beat, although sometimes you can beat them or kill the Ugin with a Dryad Arbor. If you can somehow manage to rebuild 6 damage. It comes in at 7 loyalty. It will -1 to destroy all 1-drops. Maybe it minuses 2 if you've got a particularly large core Spirit Dancer. But then you need to get up to 6 damage to kill it on swingback, or maybe you'll be able to just attack for the win. So you could do this by having a couple of Rancors and an Umbra in hand, or if you get a couple of Sentinel's Eyes into the graveyard, you're able to recast them, and 1 Ethereal Armor, that will add up to 6 as well, with the Dryad Arbor's power. Okay, so Griffspoon can be returned to the field for 4 mana, gives you... Okay, that's more for the Eldrazi Tron matchup and not relevant here, I'm sorry. So post board, what I usually do is just take Path out. But at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of Sundering Titan and World Breakers in Tron. So I'm sort of thinking maybe leaving 2 Path just to deal with those giant walls that our opponents are putting up. World Breaker does have reach, and it destroys enchantment or land. And Sundering Titan will destroy 2 lands based on basic land types. So against Tron, you want to take out your Leylines because they don't do anything. I'm taking out 1 Path from my Leyline main deck list. Excuse me. Because I'm wanting to leave 2 in. And I'm taking out a core Spirit Dancer as well. So what we're bringing in is we're bringing in our Gadok Teagues, our Force of Vigors, and the Collector Roof. Collector Roof probably only relevant when you're on the play though. So when you're on the draw, maybe you can put core Spirit Dancer in. Maybe you do bring in Collector Roof on the draw because Oblivion Stone's still a thing. But yeah, that's the Leyline main one. For the Leyline sideboard, you've got 4 paths in your main deck, so you're going to be taking 2 of those out. Probably going to take out 2 core Spirit Dancers and 2 Griffspoon. Griffspoon's a little bit weak, given the fact that they're running around with World Breaker at the moment. And you're going to want to bring in your Force of Vigors, your Gadok Teagues, and your Collector Roofs as well. Alright, so Eldrazi Tron. So this is where that Gristburn comment was meant for. So this is a less favoured matchup for us than conventional, traditional Tron. It can be a lot trickier depending on what parts of their decks that they draw. We are less favoured here than against regular Tron, yep. So they have main deck Chalice of the Void and Ensnaring Bridge, both of which wreck us hard. If you manage to dodge both of them, you have a chance of winning, but also Blast Zone can be an issue, which they can cheater for with Expedition Map. Post board, the matchup gets better, but if you don't, but you need to make sure that you don't over sideboard. For this reason, I choose to bring in Force of Vigor and Gadok Teague, but not Path to Exile. I accept that they're probably going to play a creature, but I want to keep my aura count high enough that my creature is bigger so that I can actually attack reliably for the win. If you path their one big creature and they top deck another one, you're back to where you were. But if you attack with a 5-6 power creature with a Daybreak Coroner on it, they're not going to be able to do very much at all. You should also note that there is a large dyssynergy between Force of Vigor and Gadok Teague, as once Gadok Teague is on the battlefield, you will be unable to cast Force. Excuse me. Additionally, they'll have creature removal like Dismember and Spatial Contortion, which will deal with Gadok Teague. So against Eldrazi Tron, you're going to want to take out your Ley Lines and your Path to Exiles. You're going to want to bring in your Force of Vigors, your Gadok Teagues, and Suppression Field. And I like Suppression Field in this matchup because they can hit... It affects Blast Zone. They can hit 4-mana Tron pretty reliably. And you can interrupt them searching for their Ensnaring Bridge off of it. It's also good against their Walking Ballista, which is going to shoot down your Gadok Teague. Yep. So Leyline Path out, Force, Gadok Teague, Suppression Field in. In the Leyline side matchup, we've already got Leylines in the main in a 2-off count. So we'll be taking out 4 Path, 1 Core Spirit Dancer, and bringing in the Gadok Teague and the Force of Vigors. So, against Ad Nauseam, this matchup used to be, like, somewhat winnable for us, but ever since the printing of Thassa's Oracle, they pretty much just always beat us, and there's had a lot of issues being able to deal with it. But having said that, that was before I was looking to sideboard in Torporob. Excuse me. Okay, so sometimes you can get them post-board with Stony Silence or Collect Roof, because it affects their Pentad Prisms and their Lotus Blooms, but sometimes they'll just draw the other half of their deck and combo off without their Mana Rocks, and your Artifact Hate will do nothing. Excuse me, I'm just gonna get some water. Okay. So you should also note that in the event of your opponent having an Ad Nauseam on the battlefield, you can put yourself in a position where you can actually kill them in the one attack if you have 2 creatures. So the way you do this is by having 1 first striking creature dealing them lethal damage, and then 1 regular strike, regular combat damage creature dealing them 10 damage in the one attack. It's pretty uncommon, but against a bad matchup like this, you want to take into account like as many chances as you can. So it's pretty uncommon for you to do this, but you would be looking for either a Core Spirit Dancer or all the glitters in your hand to do this reasonably, and you'd be looking to play a lot of first striking effects on your first creature, which would be the Hexproof one, and then loading up your Core Spirit Dancer or a second Bogle with non-first striking auras. So it only will work if you are careful about your aura placement, otherwise you'll just throw that chance away. Gadok Teague can stop them from casting Ad Nauseam, but since the printing of Thassa's Oracle, they can cast Thassa's Oracle, and with the trigger on the stack, cast Spoilers of the Vault, target a card which is not in their deck, draw their whole deck, the Thassa's Oracle trigger will resolve, and then they will win the game. You should note that killing the creature in response to the trigger will not do anything because it won't stop the trigger or interfere with the trigger resolving. Okay. So against Ad Nauseam at the moment, sideboard wise, I'm looking to take out my Leyline of Sanctities, my Path to Exiles, and then just a Griffspoon and a Core Spirit Dancer. Bringing in Force of Vigor, Gadok Tig, Torpor Orb, and Collector Roof. So Collector Roof will stop their mana rocks, as I was saying before. Suppression Field will not. Suppression Field will do literally nothing against this deck. Torpor Orb will stop the ETB from Thassa's Oracle, which will shut off half their combo there. Gadok Tig will shut off Leyline of Sanctity, and Force of Vigor can be used to destroy one of their mana rocks, or potentially also their Phyrexian Unlife. So in the Leyline sideboard matchup, we're going to be taking out a 4-path, a 2 Suppression Field, a Spirit Mantle, and a Core Spirit Dancer. We're going to be bringing in our Force, Gadok Tig, Torpor Orb, and Collector Roof. Okay, so Goblins is a new deck that has... Oh, well, it's been around for a long time, but it got revamped in M21 with the printing of the Snoop Goblin. Snoop Goblin. I forget, it's Conspicuous Snoop, that one. So I need to test up the matchup more if I decided whether or not it's a good or bad matchup for us, but my impressions, first impressions are that it is a good matchup for us. They do have an infinite combo, but if you have Leyline on the board, they can't deal damage to you with the infinite combo. They'll just put in a whole bunch of tapped tokens and not be able to do anything with it. There could be an issue, there's a typo there, there could be an issue if, or they can be an issue if you don't have Rancor. I don't know, I didn't type that very well. So if you don't have Rancor, Griffspoon, or Spirit Mantle, but you do have a Daybreak Coronet attacking creature, they can just block you out, like generate a token or something, go wide, like go sideways and attack you through, and then they foggle your attacks and you can't deal with the last points of damage to them. I didn't explain that well. I hope you got the point. Fortunately, we also have a lot of cards post-board that will shut them down. Alright, so as said before, Leyline will shut them down, so that's in the main deck. We'll leave it in. We'll take out our Core Spirit Dancers because they do bring in some removal spells. They bring in some discard, and their Munitions Expert does actually remove deal damage to creatures or planeswalkers, so we'll remove Core Spirit Dancer situationally. What I want to bring in is my Path to Exile, my Suppression Fields, and my Torpor Orbs. So they're obviously not going to be able to combo if tapping costs them 2 mana. They can't generate enough mana that they can actually combo through that. Torpor Orb would stop the ETBs, so it will stop the combo, and it will also stop a lot of their fun triggers that they like doing. It will shut down the deck pretty hard, similar to humans. So with the Leyline in the sideboard, we want to look at to take out our Core Spirit Dancers again. Probably a Hyena Umbra and a random land. And we want to bring in our Leyline of Sanctities and our Torpor Orb. Suppression Field and Full Path already being in the deck there. Alright, so for the humans matchup. This can be deceivingly tricky, as most people think of it as a good matchup for us, but that's not really the case. They have a lot of cards that interact with us quite easily, and it can disrupt our game plan quite well, while we have difficulty disrupting theirs. Something as simple as them playing a turn 2 Thalia and us missing a land drop can lose us the game, because we're just too far behind on tempo. We can't build a big enough creature, and they just kill us way too quickly from that point. Fortunately, from the sideboard, Torpor Orb does a lot of work for us, which I do prefer to Hushbringer, because humans will sideboard in Dismember against us to deal with Core Spirit Dancer. Or just even preemptively for Hushbringer. I've just seen many humans players bring in Dismember and hit core with it. So Torpor Orb will not affect Meddling at Mage or Phantasmal Image, but it will stop a large portion of their deck, such as Kite Sail, Freebooter, Thalia's Lieutenant, Champion of the Parish, Reflector Mage, Knight of Autumn, and Deputy of Detention. Also note that Spirit Mantle will stop core from being bounced with Reflector Mage or exiled by Deputy, but Deputy can still exile the Spirit Mantle and leave core vulnerable. Alright, so in this matchup, we're going to be taking out our Leyline of Sanctities for the first deck list, and of course Spirit Dancer. We're going to be bringing in our Torpor Orbs, a Collector Roof, and a Path. I don't think I like bringing in Stony Silence, but Collector Roof that has the additional chance to be a chump blocker seems reasonably decent to me. It'll shut down a lot of their explosiveness with Ether Vial. So with the Leyline sideboard deck, we'll leave Leylines in the sideboard. We'll take out our suppression fields because they don't do anything, and a core Spirit Dancer. We'll just bring in the 2 Torpor Orb and a Collector Roof. One other thing about this matchup that I just didn't mention before is that they quite often with their Meddling Mage naming, if they don't have Kite Self Rebooter for information, against most decks, humans players will name a removal spell in the blind. Against us, they normally name just Daybreak Coronet. And yeah, so just be aware of that. You want Path to deal with Meddling Mage so you can cast your Daybreak. Okay, Devoted Devastation. Now this is a matchup I really don't like. I don't like any variant of the deck, and I just don't think it's fun. Like, against a large majority of the metagame, they're just, like, so garbage because they just get hit by a million removal spells and then lose. And against us, because we don't interact enough with enough kill spells or counter spells, they just combo off and win every time. And I hate losing against a deck that I don't think is good in the metagame. So, yeah, they're all variants of this deck are good against us. Normally, they're a turn or two faster than what we are, which is unfortunate, so we can't really ignore them, and we're not very good at dealing with them. So I don't currently have Grafdigger's Cage in my list, but it's usually good against them. It hits Collected Company, Chord of Calling, Hour of Devastation. It shuts down a lot of them looking for their combo. Suppression Field is probably the superstar in this matchup because it will shut down their infinite mana combo. If you have spare or dead main deck slots, you can also consider bringing in Torpor Orb or Collector Roof, as Torpor Orb will deal with their ETB creature hate. Obviously, a deck that's running a lot of search their library effects for creature cards would be running likes of Reclamation Sage or whatever else. So it will help deal with that hate or Night of Autumn, something like that. Where Collector Roof will stop Walking Ballista from shooting us out. And if they have a giant Walking Ballista, that's fine. As long as they can't shoot us with it, then maybe we can win a different way. So Torpor Orb, it should also be noted that Torpor Orb is really good at beating the Heliod combo version of the deck. I'm just not focused on that variant because that's not the most frequently played one since the printing of Luris. So against this deck, we're going to be looking to take out our Leyline of Sanctities, either 2 core Spirit Dancers or 2 Griffspoon and then one of the other. Then we're going to look to bring in Suppression Field, Gaddock Teague, Collector Roof, and 1 Path to Exile. For the Leyline sideboard deck, we're just going to look to take out a core Spirit Dancer and a couple of Griffspoons. They do have a lot of ways to block flying creatures with their birds. And we're going to look to bring in Gaddock Teague and Collector Roof. Suppression Field is already in the Leyline side deck, main deck. That sounded really, really weird there. Leyline's already in this list in the main deck, so we don't need to board it in there. Sorry, I'm just pausing so I can cough because my throat's not dealing very well with me talking without a rest here. Okay, so Death Shadow decks. So this can be a difficult matchup or it can be a free matchup. The point where it can be very difficult is if you don't have Leyline of Sanctity on the battlefield, turn 1 and you're on the draw. They'll always have a discard spell for you, and you'll just lose your hexproof creature, and then you won't be able to play the game. Maybe, if you're fortunate, you'll have a second hexproof creature in hand, or your top deck one. But, yeah, it's not good if that happens. So, however, if you manage to resolve a hexproof creature and get 4 to 5 power on it, and also a Grist Boon or Spirit Mantle, you'll normally win the match. Beware of cards such as Stubborn Denial, Team of Battle Rage, and I should also say the Royal Scions as well. And know when you can't play around them. So, know that, yeah, if you're like, I can't beat that card, but I'm not winning by playing it patiently, I need to go all in and assume they don't have it, then that's probably the correct decision. Also, attacking with a non-evasive creature. So when you attack with a non-evasive creature that has Rancor, and they block you with a Death Shadow, you need to be able to consider whether or not you want to trample all that damage over the top of them, or deal additional damage to the shadow and not trample all of it over the top. The way the Death Shadow will interact with them losing life is, let's say they've got a 7 power Death Shadow, and I attack for 10, and I trample 3 damage over the top. I will only deal 7 damage to the shadow, and at the same time as I deal the damage, the shadow's power and toughness will rise, so it won't actually die, and it will stay on the board. At which point, it will deal damage back to you. If you don't have enough toughness, then it can kill your creature, or it can just make it difficult to attack in the following turn. So what you can do there is assign additional points of damage onto the Death Shadow so it doesn't grow, and so that you deal with it straight away. Alright. Postboard, beware of the likes of Liliana and Plague Engineer. Plague Engineer is a card I see brought in a lot against us, and it's really annoying because Grist Boon doesn't put points of toughness, and neither does Rancor. So postboard, just be aware that you want to resolve a toughness aura so you don't just lose to Plague Engineer. Traverse Shadow. Against Traverse Shadow, you also want Rest in Peace. It's really good. It shuts down their Traverse to search for Death Shadow, and it also shrinks down their Tomoglyphs. Really, really solid card. And bringing in Suppression Field when you're on the play could be beneficial, as it will wreck our opponent's mana base, which are very shock heavy. Very fetch heavy. And it will also interfere with their Mishra's Bauble or Liliana of the Veil. So there's not much I want to change from my Laneland main board list. I'll probably remove some core Spirit Dancers, bring in some Suppression Fields and the Fourth Path. And for my Leyline sideboard list, I'm bringing in the Leylines and just removing the core Spirit Dancers. I already have my Suppression Fields in there, and core Spirit Dancer can be good, maybe as a 2-of. If you don't have Suppression Field in your list, it's probably not the end of the world. As a 2-of, so that when you empty your hand, you've got 3 mana, you can play core Spirit Dancer and an aura in the same turn. But as far as the list I've got, they're sort of the weakest card at my initial glance, so I'm leaning to taking them out. It's like, also they have counter magic for your auras, so you want a large amount of auras in the deck to be able to break through their full Summoner. So against Urza Combo, so this matchup can basically go either way. Usually either you win hard or you lose hard. If they manage to reoccur an engineered explosives with an Emry or a Goblin Engineer, you're doomed. We need Graveyard Hate for them, as it interrupts Emry, Goblin Engineer, and the Thop to Sword combo. Additionally, things like Suppression Field are quite good against them as well. I'm not super sure on the number of path that you want to leave in, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere between 2 and 4. You should also note that Stony Silence and Collector Oof will not stop Urza from tapping the artifacts for mana, so that might be a little bit of a weak board in. I don't usually have Grafdigger's Cage. I don't have Grafdigger's Cage in my list at the moment, but it can be a handy board in to interrupt the Emry. And the most important thing with this matchup is to be careful not to overboard. I say that and I'm boarding all these cards here. So you're going to want to look to take out your Leyline of Sanctities unless they're running discard effects, which I guess some Grixis versions of the deck might be. So you're going to look to, yeah, I've done something a little bit funky here. So I've done my definite outs and then my maybe outs because I'm not 100% sure on the optimal board for this matchup. It's just something to consider. So as I was saying before, Rest in Peace, Torpor Orb, and Suppression Field are all really good against them. Stony Silence could have some applicability, and so would Path. At a first glance, I would say that these are the 8 cards you want more than the 4th Path and the one of Stony Silence. Additionally, you could potentially remove a path to go down to 2 paths in this list, which is a maybe out, which I didn't include here for some reason. But your Griff Spoons are pretty weak here because they get lots of flying Thopters, which they can block with from the Thopter-Sorb combo. And it's not too bad shaving 1 Core Spirit Dancer. You really want to go in on a Hexproof creature and use the Core Spirit Dancer as a draw engine later. Leyline doesn't do much. And then as the maybe outs, obviously I've got 7 cards in the definite out pile, 8 cards in the definite in pile. Just take at least one of these cards from the maybe out pile and add it in there, whether or not it's the 3rd Griffspoon, the 2nd Core, or the 1 of Forest, or even the Path to Exile as well. And mix and match something along those lines as to what you want. So for the lane line in the sideboard, we're going to leave it in the sideboard unless we see discard effects. And we're going to look to just take out 2 Core Spirit Dancers and 2 Griffspoon, potentially a Path or a Forest, or even potentially 2 Paths as well. And we're going to look to bring in our Rest in Peace and our Torpor Orb here, potentially a Stony Silence. So, that is going to be it for the part 1 of this video, I'm pretty sure. Yep, that's it for part 2 of this video. Next week I'm going to be doing part 3. If there's any matchups you want to see covered, which I haven't included in that list there, please let me know in the comments and I'll look to add them in. As it was, yeah, this was a fairly large and substantial amount of work, and required a pretty decent amount of effort as well. So if you did enjoy it, please remember to leave a like and a comment down below. I would appreciate it, given the amount of time and effort I put into this rather than just playing a game. And other than that, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to, yeah, I've already said that. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for daily Bogles content. And I'll see you guys next week for the part 3 and what I assume is the final part of the series. So yeah, thank you all for watching. See you next time.